How long does it actually take to beat every Mario RPG? Not speedrunner times, just realistic playthroughs. In this video, I'm breaking down every Mario RPG and looking at how long they take based on pacing, difficulty, and how much the games expect you to explore. For each title, I'm going to give 3 estimates: a typical first-time playthrough, smoother run from an experienced player, and a full 100% completion where you do everything the game has to offer. These are average ranges, not exact numbers. There's going to be people who beat these games faster and slower, so just keep that in mind. We start with Super Mario RPG, which basically set the tone for everything that came after. The pacing in this game is surprisingly snappy by 16-bit RPG standards, short areas, fast text, and a story that rarely wastes your time. You go from Bowser's Castle to the Mushroom Kingdom to Rose Town and beyond with a really clean rhythm of new town, quick story beat, new dungeon, boss, move on. There's almost no grinding if you're playing normally. The timed hit system keeps battles engaging but quick, and the game is short enough that it never feels like it overstays its welcome. The middle of the game, like areas like Booster Town and Moleville, is where the pacing is at its best. You get silly cutscenes, new party members, and mini set pieces like the minecart ride that break up the usual battle explore cycle. The only time it starts to slow is like late game when you hit big dungeons like Bowser's Keep or optional areas like the Cool X fight and the more obnoxious minigames. That's where players who want to see everything start adding real hours. If you're experienced and know where to go, Super Mario RPG is closer to like a weekend playthrough than a massive expansive RPG you'll be playing for weeks or something. An efficient run that doesn't rush but doesn't wander or have too much struggle is going to land you in the 8 to 10 hour range. For most first time players taking their time with dialogue and a bit of optional content, think around like 12 to 15 hours. If you're going for 100% hidden chests, super bosses, clearing minigames, all that you're looking at is roughly 20 to 25 hours. I actually played this recently and it took me about 10 hours. Paper Mario takes the RPG foundation and slows things down into a more traditional adventure structure. Instead of the rapid-fire linear march, you get chapter-based journeys that all have their own vibe. The Koopa Bros Fortress, the desert, the Haunted Forest, the Toy Box, the Tropical Island, the Snowy Mountain, Bowser's Sky Fortress. The pacing is still fairly brisk, except for the long tutorial at the beginning. But each chapter has more exploration and puzzle solving than Super Mario RPG, so just walking around and talking to people does eat up more time. What really makes this game feel longer than it actually is are just the little detours. Doing side quests for Quizmo, hunting star pieces for badges, messing around in Toad Town tunnels, and backtracking to earlier areas with new abilities. Nothing is required, but it's the kind of game where you naturally end up doing just one more thing over and over. The combat's quick and clean, and because the badges let you break the game in fun ways, you rarely ever need to grind in this. Most of the time is spent moving through levels, reading dialogue, and just solving light puzzles. If you know the game decently well, Paper Mario is about 18 to 20 hours for a focused main story run. For a typical first time playthrough where you explore a bit more, talk to everyone, and maybe do some star pieces or badge hunting, expect around 22 to 25 hours. Now if you're going for 100%, which is all star pieces, all badges, cooking recipes, every little side activity, it's going to be around 30 to 35 hours. Before I get to the next game, I just want to say if you're enjoying this, be sure to like and subscribe. Mario Luigi Superstar Saga is where the series decides to get funnier, chaotic, and extremely button-based. The pacing leans more towards comedic moments and set pieces than more exploration. You're constantly thrown into little mini scenarios, like minecart rides, the Chocola Forest, a fake airport security bit, and those break up the usual walk, talk, fight loop in a good way. The Bean Kingdom is fairly compact, and areas are interconnected in a way that keeps things snappy once you unlock more hammers, abilities, more probe moves. The combat system, with its fully timed attacks and dodges, speeds up battles once you're used to it. You don't need to grind as long as you're not running from everything. Most of the extra time comes from getting used to the controls, fumbling some of the more awkward minigames, and maybe going back for hidden beans and upgrades. There's some difficulty spikes, even though most of the game is fairly easy, but if you're like me, you probably just spent way too much time on the final boss, which just loaded the playtime a little bit. If you're experienced and know the general route, Superstar Saga main story can comfortably be done in around like 14 to 16 hours. For a blind or semi-blind first run, where you occasionally get stuck on a puzzle or boss, you're likely to land in the 18 to 20 hour range. If you want 100% all hidden beans, all equipment, side content, and messing with late optional enemies, you're looking at around 25 to 30 hours. So overall, this game isn't much longer than Super Mario RPG, no matter what you try to do. The Thousand Year Door takes the Paper Mario formula and just complicates it in every good way. Well, almost, and I'll get to that. The game is structured as a series of chapters once again, but each chapter is basically its own little RPG arc. The pro wrestling drama of Glitzville, the Chris Train mystery of Riverside Station, which is the best chapter in the game by the way, the pirate adventure on Key Hall Key, and so on. The pacing is slower than the N64 game because the chapters are bigger, the backtracking is heavier, and the dialogue is a lot denser. The middle stretch, especially the Glitz Pit and the Twilight Town Excess Express sequence, is where you really feel the hours start to stack up. There's more talking, more rerunning areas, which can really pad the playtime. In my video going over the biggest flaw in every Mario RPG, my pick for the 1000-year door was the backtracking. Then you've got the Pit 100 trials, side quests via the Trouble Center, badge experimentation, and all the Miss Mouse, Shine Sprite completion stuff. If you decide you care about that content, that's where playtime jumps dramatically. For someone who's already familiar with the game, a focused story run is quite a few hours longer than Paper Mario 64. It's going to be around 24 to 28 hours or so. A typical first playthrough, taking time with dialogue and doing a decent chunk of side quests, usually ends up around 30 to 35 hours. Now if you're going for 100%, which is the Pit 100 trials, all Trouble Center jobs, every badge, recipes, star pieces, tattles, you're realistically staring at about 45 to 55 hours total, way more than any other game before it. Partners in Time is a little darker and a little weirder, and a bit more linear than Superstar Saga. The time travel structure is actually far more straightforward than it sounds. Just pop into different time bubbles like Yoshi's Island, Swamp Volcano, Peach's Castle's Past, and clear them in a mostly fixed order. The pacing doesn't give you a huge open world to roam, it's more like a set of themed corridors with battles, puzzles, and some backtracking. The big pacing quirk is managing 4 characters at once, swapping between the bros and the babies, learning all the multi-button attacks, and dealing with some occasional finicky platforming can slow things down, especially early on, but once you get into the rhythm, the game is fairly compact, and the story burns through its set pieces with only mild padding. There aren't a ton of semi-mandatory side activities, meaning things you don't have to do but really should do, so most of your time is just the main stuff like for the story. If you know the game or just play efficiently, you can finish Partners in Time in around 16 to 18 hours. Most players on their first run will probably land closer to 20 to 22 hours. If you decide to go for 100% beans, items, extra gear, and poking around every nook and cranny, you're looking at around 28 to 35 hours. When I replayed this, I really breezed through it because I just focused on getting from point A to point B with minimal side activities, and you probably will too, just how the game's structured, but there is actually a decent amount to do here besides the main campaign. Super Paper Mario shifts away from turn-based combat entirely and becomes this hybrid action platformer with RPG numbers and text boxes that never stop. The pacing is interesting because the moment-to-moment gameplay, just running, flipping dimensions, basic platforming, is pretty fast, but the storytelling is very chatty. Like the early hours, especially in the first few worlds, are just loaded with exposition, character introductions, and long dialogue sequences that can make the game feel longer than its actual runtime. How you decide to handle this really makes the difference. Like, do you want to read everything or just mash A? Now personally, I like the story, I like how much effort they put into this, but I could definitely see why if someone doesn't really care about that they might not really like this game. Mechanically, flipping between 2D and 3D, collecting pixels, and just progressing forward is very simple, but this is also where the pacing starts to sag in the second half, especially worlds that lean into more backtracking or gimmicks. The big time sink for completionists is not the main story, but the optional content, which is the Pit 100 trials twice, collecting cards, and just doing obscure, annoying side quests like to get Piccolo. As someone who loves this game and considers this one of my favorite games of all time, I never had the patience for this quest. For a player like myself who's played this like 6 or 7 times, a relatively efficient story run checks in around 10 to 15 hours, so one of the shorter games here. Could be a little longer for someone not really trying to rush. A standard first playthrough, which is reading all the dialogue, maybe getting lost once or twice, doing some of the side stuff, sits around 19 to 22 hours, but 100% completion is a massive jump. Both pits, cards, hidden bits, full side content can push you into 45 to 55 hours. That's just a crazy amount when you realize that this game you could beat it in under 10 hours if you're not even speedrunning. Funnily enough though, I think the speedrunning world record for 100% of this is like 10 hours, so it's crazy how these people can play these games so fast. Bowser's Inside Story is one of the best paced games in the series. Splitting time between controlling Bowser in the overworld and the bros inside his body keeps the flow extremely varied. You might spend one moment punching through fields as Bowser, then suddenly you're in a side-scrolling dungeon inside his stomach solving puzzles and powering him up from the inside. The overworld feels a bit larger and more interconnected than in Partners in Time, but there's still a very clear main route and not much room to truly get lost. The big set pieces, giant Bowser battles, minigames like inflating his body, or manipulating his muscles act as rhythm breakers, so the usual battles never feel too repetitive. Optional content exists like hidden blocks, extra gear, some tougher enemies, but compared to later Mario Luigi entries, this one doesn't drown you in side activities. For an experienced player who knows the critical path, Bowser's Inside Story is going to take you around 20 to 22 hours. First time players, especially if they stop to explore or just struggle a bit on some bosses, will fall more in the 25 to 30 hour range. Going forward 100%, which means all beans, best equipment, extra fights, and hidden content lands around 35 to 45 hours. And now we have Sticker Star, which is the game you've all been waiting for. I actually went on my 3DS before this video to see how long it took me to beat, and I will get to that in just a little bit. So this game is divided into small self-contained stages on a world map, more like a 2D Mario platformer. And also it's not like Super Paper Mario, which is a platformer and very linear. On paper, that should make it fast, but the puzzle design and reliance on specific thing stickers can slow you down massively if you don't know what the game wants. There's less story and fewer big cutscenes, but more time spent wandering around levels trying to figure out what random object solves which obstruction. Backtracking is also just so stupid in this game and added hours to my one and only playthrough of this game. Battles themselves are pretty quick, and because there's no traditional XP system, the game kind of pushes you to avoid unnecessary fights. This means most of your hours come from solving environmental puzzles, revisiting past levels, and hunting for the correct stickers rather than grinding. For people who know exactly where everything is, the game is shorter. For people going in blind and not using a guide, some chapters can feel like a brick wall and just pad out the runtime substantially. If you're familiar with Sticker Star or just really good at picking levels out of a hat that happen to have the one thing you need, you get through the main story in like 18 to 20 hours, although it feels much longer. I could also see someone beating this a lot faster if they really just avoid fights, which won't hurt you at all since the fights do not matter, there's no XP here. But for a typical first time player, getting stuck on a few puzzles and revisiting older stages, that's gonna clock in around 22 to 25 hours. And as you could see on screen, I took this the other day. It took me 25 hours and 2 minutes, and I have not touched this game since March 10th, 2015. Now, for 100% completion, finding all comet pieces, hidden things, filling the sticker museum, and fully exploring every stage, you're looking at about 30 to 35 hours. But let's be honest, it's already one thing to beat Sticker Star. If you go beyond that to 100% this, you deserve a medal if we're being honest. Dream Team is where the Mario and Luigi series becomes long. The structure alternates between exploring Pillow Island in the overworld and diving into Luigi's dreams for side-scrolling dream sequences. Sounds like a good mix, but in practice, there's a lot of tutorials, cutscenes, and repeated patterns that pad the game out. The early hours especially are notorious for lengthy dialogue and handholding, which can make the game feel like it takes forever to properly start. Once you're past the front-loaded tutorials, the game's dungeons are actually solid, and the dream sequences give you big creative set pieces with Luigi-based gimmicks and massive boss battles. But it is also where you start seeing the kind of like, oh, another dream segment, another giant battle, another upgrade repetition that lengthens the game. There is optional content like expert challenges and extra battles, but a huge chunk of your playtime is simply the main story being just very long-winded. If you're experienced and play efficiently, Dream Team's main story still lands at a hefty 30 to 35 hours. For most people on a first run, you're still looking at around 40 to 50 hours, which I believe that's how long it took me, somewhere in that range. If you go for 100%, including expert challenges, optional fights, and fully exploring the island and dream worlds, the playtime climbs into the 60 to 70 hour range. Personally, I think this is just too long. Even though I really do like Dream Team, I feel like 25 to 30 hours though is a good sweet spot, and this just goes a little longer than that. Puzzles & Dragons Super Mario Bros. Edition is a match 3 puzzle RPG mashup, and a lot of you seem to not even remember this exists. I made a ranking of all the Mario RPGs the other day at the time of writing, and I got quite a number of comments from people who just did not know this game was a thing. And I don't really blame them. It was a niche game that came out like 10 years ago, and it is an RPG, but really all you do is just solve puzzle boards and go through the linear New Super Mario Bros.-esque map. There's no real exploration here, there's no real story. This is more about assembling teams and grinding for better monsters and power-ups. If you're laser focused on clearing each world once, the campaign moves surprisingly briskly. Fights can go fast if you're good at making combos and you've built a reasonably strong team, but this is also a game where grinding and optimization can swallow hours rerunning dungeons for better drops, leveling characters, and chasing completion tasks like filling out rosters. For a reasonably efficient run through just the main Super Mario Bros. Campaign, because there is the whole other mode in this, it's going to be about 20 to 25 hours. A more relaxed first time playthrough with some extra team building and retries will fall in around the 25 to 30 hour range. And if you want 100% maximizing teams, clearing all content, and leaning into the grind, you're easily looking at 55 to 65 hours. I've seen some people say this can take up to 90 hours to 100%, and I have to imagine it's a very small amount of people who've actually done that. Paper Jam is a crossover that brings Paper Mario into the Mario & Luigi formula, and structurally it is very linear. You move forward through themed areas with a mix of battles, paper toad hunts, which suck, and scripted set pieces like papercraft battles, which also suck. The pacing is a bit uneven. Regular dungeons and story segments move fine, but the repeated toad hunting missions and minigame style sequences can drag things out more than they need to. Combat's still timing focused, and with 3 bros on the field and trio attacks, battles can be flashy and longer than in earlier games. There's not a ton of optional exploration compared to Dream Team. The game is more about just doing a long chain of required scenarios. However, there are long-form challenges and optional missions that extend the runtime if you chase them. If you played it before and know how to handle the more annoying side segments, a focused main story run of Paper Jam comes out to around 24 to 27 hours. Most first time players dealing with detours and some difficulty spikes are going to fall into the 28 to 32 hour range. If you go after 100% all expert challenges, side quests, optional papercraft battles, and grinding for top gear, you're looking at around 55 to 65 hours, since those perfect challenges can be very time hungry. For me, I had absolutely no desire to do anything close to 100%ing this game. Color Splash is kind of the halfway point between Sticker Star and Origami King. Structurally, it keeps that world map level-based setup from Sticker Star, but the pacing is a little more relaxed and a lot more personality-driven. You're bouncing between different islands of Prism Island, each with its own mini-story, visual gimmick, and colorless spots to fill in. The game spends more time on dialogue and comedy than Sticker Star did, so even though you're still solving environmental puzzles and hunting for things, it doesn't feel quite as dry moment to moment. Where the hours really pile up is in revisiting stages. You'll often clear a level once, then come back later with a new thing card or story trigger to reveal an extra path or boss. The combat is still card-based and not super deep, but the spectacle and the whole paint hammer mechanic keeps things visually interesting. It's not a grind-heavy RPG, it's more of a long adventure where your time goes into exploring every corner of Prism Island, dealing with puzzle logic, and watching a lot of goofy cutscenes play out. If you know what you're doing and don't obsess over every single colorless spot, Color Splash's main story lands around 25 to 28 hours. For a typical first playthrough where you follow most side paths, redo a few stages, and enjoy the writing, you could expect around 30 to 35 hours. And if you're going for 100% all colorless spots, all things, every Rochambeau temple, full card completion, you're looking at roughly 40 to 50 hours. So I often don't talk about remakes in videos like this, but it does take a different amount of time to beat than the original, so I feel like it's worth mentioning. Superstar Saga Remake follows the original story and structure very closely, like the overworld layout, dungeons, jokes, and battles are mostly the same, but the pacing benefits from quality of life improvements. It has cleaner menus, more forgiving timing windows, and some slightly modernized flow. The big new piece in this game is Bowser's Minions, and that's just a side campaign where you control Goombas and other minions in a more automated strategy mode. If you play just the main story, your experience will be very similar to the GBA version. There'll be a mild bump if you watch new cutscenes or interact more with added features. Bowser's Minions adds a separate, more bite-sized campaign that you could dip into between story beats, and that can extend your total time if you commit to it. For someone familiar with the original, an efficient run of the main story is going to be about 15 to 17 hours, with a typical first playthrough on 3DS, reading all new dialogue, poking Bowser's Minions, and you'll be playing this for around 20 to 22 hours. If you're in for 100%, clearing and optimizing Bowser's Minions, collecting items, doing all optional content, you can expect something from like 28 to 35 hours. Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle pivots to tactical strategy. Instead of traditional JRPG battles, you're essentially playing a grid-based XCOM Lite with Mario characters and Rabbids for some reason. The pacing feels very different, spending most of your time in battles and short exploration segments in between, and each chapter is built around a sequence of tactical encounters and boss fights. The early game is fairly gentle, and if you grasp cover mechanics and movement tricks like team jumps, battles can go pretty quickly. Later worlds introduce gimmicks and enemies that slow things down, like there's heavier units, shields, weather hazards, but the campaign is still structured cleanly into finite fights. Where the hours really add up is if you tackle all the optional challenges, post-game content, and DLC like Donkey Kong Adventure. Now I've seen tons of ranges for how long it takes people to beat this game. I've seen people say like 15 if you're experienced, I've seen 25, then I've seen anywhere from 20 to 35 be the average. Now if you're aiming for 100% every battle challenge, secret encounter, collectible, skill tree, and extra modes, you're looking at around 35 to 40 hours, but apparently some people take over 100. There also is the Donkey Kong DLC that can add up to like 15 hours if you 100% it. For me, I only played this once, and I want to say it was around 25 hours or so. The Bowser's Inside Story remake similarly keeps the original DS campaign mostly intact, and it just polishes the visuals and interface. The pacing is roughly the same, like you're still alternating between Bowser and the Bros with big set pieces. The main difference in time comes from Bowser Jr.'s Journey, which is a side mode where you manage squads and auto battles and kind of like a strategy format again. It is more optional than Bowser's Minions. Like if you dive into this, which you don't have to, it can be a fairly substantial chunk of extra content with its own narrative and a good number of stages. For an efficient run through the main story on 3DS, you're looking at around 15 to 22 hours. A normal first time playthrough that mixes in some Bowser Jr.'s Journey will probably end up around 28 to 32 hours overall. Now going for 100%, which is fully progressing through Bowser Jr.'s Journey and everything in the main game, it's going to put you at about 40 to 50 hours. The Origami King is built almost like an adventure game with very minor RPG elements. You have large semi-open regions tied together by the streamer storyline, where you follow giant colored streamers to different themed areas, like there's a theme park, desert, ocean, etc. The pacing is slower and more exploratory than Sticker Star or Color Splash, with a lot of time spent walking around, rescuing toads, filling in holes with confetti, and solving other environmental puzzles. The boss structure with ring-based combat and gimmick-heavy fights can add up real time, especially if you're learning the systems or just messing up ring layouts. Regular battles can be quite fast once you either get solving the rings or just start skipping them, but boss fights are more like puzzles with multiple turns of setup and payoff. Completionists will spend a ton of time hunting down hidden toads, collectibles, trophies, and experimenting with optional bits like hidden scenes. For an experienced player, moving efficiently through the story and not obsessing over every collectible, Origami King is around 22 to 28 hours. For a typical first time run, exploring most areas and doing some side content, expect 28 to 32 hours or so. If you chase 100% including all toads, trophies, collectibles, and hidden events, you're looking at around 50 to 60 hours. Sparks of Hope takes the tactical foundation of Kingdom Battle and loosens it up a little bit. Movement is more freeform within a zone instead of grid-based, and each planet feels like a small hub world with side quests, optional battles, and exploration. The pacing is therefore more varied, like you can mainline key story battles and skip a lot of optional encounters, or you can clear out planets and watch the time climb. The early planets can go pretty quickly if you stick to the critical path, but as you unlock more sparks and more side missions, it's really tempting to spend time optimizing builds and trying optional challenges. Boss fights and set pieces tend to be longer, like more involved tactical puzzles and Kingdom Battle's early game encounters, especially towards the end. The game is very friendly to just doing one more mission, which is how you suddenly realize you spent 3 hours on side content. For a quick story focused run, Sparks of Hope clocks in at around 17 to 22 hours, but it can vary a lot. A typical first playthrough where you do a healthy mix of story and side quests on each planet is usually 25 to 30 hours, and aiming for a completionist run, which is every side mission, every spark, all challenges, all collectibles, is going to bring you to the 50 to 60 hour range. But then there's multiple DLCs that can really pad the time and get close to 100 hours with everything. The Super Mario RPG remake is extremely faithful to the SNES original in terms of structure and pacing, and there's not really too much else I have to say about it. Like, it's basically the same game, it just looks a lot better, it has quality of life improvements, and it's going to take around like the same range, like 8 to 10 hours. Might be 12 to 15 hours if you take a little longer, and to do everything it's going to be 20 to 25 hours. So again, not too much to say here, but I did just want to give it a mention. And then, like with Super Mario RPG, the Thousand Year Door remake is also very similar to its original. The one thing though that really does improve pacing is that this greatly improves the backtracking. Like, that was a pretty big issue in the original, like I mentioned, and this just has quality of life improvements there. It has better load times, and then there's some other things that aren't even related to the time, but it has new music, it has UI improvements. Like, is this going to save you hours upon hours of time, like with the improved quality of life tweaks and the improved backtracking? No, not too much. It's going to be in the same ballpark, like 24 to 28 hours for an efficient playthrough, 30 to 35 for a typical first playthrough, maybe like 45 to 55 if you're doing everything. And then finally, we have Mario Luigi Brothership. So the series finally came back with nautical nonsense, and it has big story arcs, themed islands, dungeons full of bros moves puzzles, and lots of combat. The overworld hub and island hopping structure gives it a sense of scale, and the game is very willing to keep you in a given dungeon or region for a long stretch, and that will add up hours. The pacing mixes classic timing-based battles with new mechanics and multi-character interactions, and there's a fair amount of optional exploration and challenge content on top of the main quest. Like, this game has a lot of side quests, and some are limited time, making you feel like you have to do them so you don't miss out. There's optional combat challenges and secrets that can significantly increase playtime beyond just a bare bones story run. For a very efficient, experienced run where you pretty much just do the main story, it's still going to take around 30 to 35 hours, but more often than not, a standard playthrough is going to be between like 41 and 50 hours. And for a completionist run, which is all optional bosses, all side quests, full exploration, everything this game has to offer, it's going to be 60 to 80 hours, making it arguably the longest game to 100% of the series. Other ones you could argue are Puzzles and Dragons if you really take a long time in that. Put all these together and decide for some reason that you're going to beat every Mario RPG, what does that actually look like in terms of hours? If you're an experienced player playing fairly efficiently and mostly sticking to the main story in each game, you're looking at roughly 373 to 446 hours to clear all of them. So call it like around 400 hours. Like, obviously there's going to be huge variations here. There's not going to be one perfect time, but just say the average person who is experienced and goes through quick playthroughs is going to take around 400 hours. For a more first time experience playthrough, it's going to be around 500 to 600 to get through the entire Mario RPG catalog. And if you're going for 100% in every single Mario RPG, all the side quests, hits 100 trials, expert challenges, sparks, trophies, optional bosses, collectibles, puzzle grinds, and every little detour in this game, you are looking at around 800 to 1000 hours of time button presses, badge setups, puzzle dungeons, tactical battles, and Rabbids for some reason. And that's before you factor in extra DLC content for things like Mario plus Rabbids, and that could push this even higher. However you slice it, like, the series covers everything from short 10-hour games to experiences that can take over 60 hours. For me personally, I'd say I'm usually one of the first two categories here. Like, either I do an efficient playthrough since I'm usually pretty good at Mario RPGs, or sometimes I take my time and try to do a lot of extra content. I have not 100%ed any Mario RPG to my knowledge, and seeing how long it would take to 100% all of them, I think I'm good on that. And just a little semi-off-topic discussion I want to have is, do you like to 100% games? Like, when you go into a game, do you want to do everything it has to offer? Does it depend on the game? For me, it's very, very rare for me to 100% it. Like, I usually like to do the main campaign and some extras. Like, it's hard for me to just try to do every little thing a game has to offer. But I want to hear your thoughts in the comments, and if you made it to the end of this video, be sure to like and subscribe. Like, it took a lot of time to do research and just try to figure out a good range for each game to figure out how long it is. And I have a lot of other Mario RPG content. Like, if you're into Mario RPGs, which you clearly are if you made it to the end of the video, check out some of my other videos. Consider joining my Discord as well, as I'm trying to build a community over there. Thank you for watching Domainy, and I'll see you next time.